Hello and welcome back to another video. So, the OnePlus 7 Pro was regarded as one of the best phones to come out of 2019. It won Marques Brownlee's Smartphone of the Year award. And we're going to examine how good it is in 2021. But before we start, I want to shout out my friend Dean from twitch.tv/DeanRumbles. He actually gave me this phone to use and review in 2021, and I'm very thankful for that. So his link will be in the description. Go watch him. He streams a lot of fun games. If you were to pick up a OnePlus 7 Pro for yourself in 2021, I would suggest that you get it used or refurbished. At the time of filming, you can get it around $300. Things may change based on when you're buying and where you buy it from. To get into the phone, we have that fast optical fingerprint scanner, and it works really well. It's one of my favorite options for sure. This version I have right here is the 256GB version with 8GB of RAM, which is probably what I'd recommend most to you guys. The extra RAM may or may not be important to you, but I think it's nice to have. I think we all can say that the OnePlus 7 Pro was ahead of its time when it came out in 2019. You have a notchless display with a pop-out camera, and the screen itself just looks fantastic. It's a little bit too curved for my liking, but I think most people will be okay with it. And after 2 years, the pop-up camera hasn't been an issue for me at all. It still works quite well, and it seems like it's still going to continue to work well. But the design is extremely premium with the aluminum rails and the glass front and back, and it holds up really well in 2021. You can get some nice colors on this phone still too, with that nebula blue color. Now to me, the display is what really makes this phone special. We have a 90Hz 1440p OLED display, and it's that perfect sweet spot of still feeling really fast like 120Hz, but not taking up as much battery. In addition, you get 1440p over 1080p like you see in the S21 Plus and other phones. The colors on here look very nice, and the only issue I have is slight burn-in, which I've experienced over time, but it's not really an issue unless you see an all-white display, and then you can notice it just a little bit. It's also worth noting that that might just be my model. I haven't heard of a widespread burn-in issue with this phone in particular, although we know that OLEDs have experienced burn-in over time in general. Now, because of the display, watching content on here is just so cool. And to see uninterrupted content when you zoom in is just perfect. The speaker system on here is a stereo pair, but I have heard better. It's not bad by any means, and I think it will suffice for most people. The display might have been one of the phone's biggest strengths, but one of the phone's biggest weaknesses is its camera. And that's not to say that its camera was bad, it just was probably one of the worst aspects of this phone, which was regarded as phone of the year to many people. In comparison to Apple and Google at the time, and even Samsung, the camera experience just was not up to par. It is versatile with an ultra-wide lens, a 48 megapixel main sensor, and a 3x telephoto lens. But images just aren't as sharp, and video isn't nearly as good as some of the competition. Another important category to most people is the battery life, and the OnePlus 7 Pro has a relatively large 4000 mAh battery. But remember, it is powering a 1440p 90Hz OLED display, and over time the battery life degraded, just like how you'd see in most phones. Now, the battery life is not so good. Get probably like 4 to 5 hours of screen on time if I'm lucky, and it really feels like it goes by fast in standby as well. But the OnePlus 7 Pro does have an ace up its sleeve in 30-watt warp charging. When I need a charge, you just plug it into that warp charge, and this thing fills up very quickly. So although the battery life isn't as good, because of warp charging, you don't feel that kind of battery anxiety. Now let's move on to talk about software before talking about more hardware. And OnePlus has become very popular because of Oxygen OS. And needless to say, Oxygen OS is very smooth and quick. I like the customization you can do on Oxygen OS. It is one of my favorite Android skins for sure. You have useful tools like Fanatic mode for gaming that just make the experience a little bit better. OnePlus does have a good track record with updates on many of their phones as well. I'm guessing from this point on, we'll see at least one more major software version on the OnePlus 7 Pro. Another area where the OnePlus 7 Pro thrives is in performance and gaming. The Snapdragon 855 paired with 90Hz makes everyday tasks feel very fast, and your gaming experience gets a boost as well. We saw that in my speed test. The OnePlus 7 Pro beat the iPhone 11 Pro Max with the better A13 Bionic chip. So we can say the Snapdragon 855 on here still runs extremely well on Oxygen OS. In gaming, we have that great performance as well as the notchless full display, and it just makes the experience that much better. I think a lot of mobile gamers are going to like this phone as a budget option even. But with all that said, this is a OnePlus phone, and OnePlus has had very competitive pricing in the past, which is why this phone started below $700 when it was new. And to obtain that kind of price, there are things missing on here that we should discuss. There is no wireless charging or IP rating, which might be very important to many people, but the alternative of having warp charging really makes up for that wireless charging being missing. And OnePlus did independent testing in order to ensure that this phone would be fine in the rain and splashes. It just doesn't have that IP certification that would have cost more money. There is also no micro SD card support here, so go for the 256GB model because you'll be getting more RAM and you don't have to worry about any storage in the future. And finally, worth noting is that it doesn't have 5G unless you get the OnePlus 7 Pro with 5G, which most aren't. And that might not be a very important omission right now, given where you're from and the rollout of 5G, but if you're keeping this for the long term, it could be something worth missing. Now you might be asking yourself, do these missing features matter? And I would say probably not for the vast majority of people, because there is a counter to everything missing really. Few things there aren't. I didn't name literally everything. And you will have to decide for yourself if it's a deal breaker. But this phone gets my recommendation in 2021 because it's still a great option for many of the reasons stated in this video. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and peace.